All right, welcome back to Year One Podcast, episode number 10. I'm Gavin Farnan, and with me, as always, the insightful trio of Micah McNeil, Felipe Segura, and Zachary Crilley. We have a very special episode today for you guys as we welcome in the new year, and we hope all of our listeners have had a great year of change and growth, and we look forward to 2024. But speaking of that change and growth, we wanted to start off today's episode with a little look inside the most popular time of change, which of course is the new year and New Year's resolutions. And I wanted to pull up a few graphs of what that looks like for a majority of people. So for our listeners, we are pulling up a graph right now of different kinds of resolutions. Guys, can you see that?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so some of these, I mean, they're to be expected. The top one is improve fitness. Second one's improve finances, and then mental health, lose weight, improve diet. So I wasn't really surprised by a lot of these. I don't know what you guys think, but I feel like most of these are pretty popular. Are there any ones that you would expect on there?
I mean, yeah, the most common New Year's resolutions are definitely popular. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all to be expected, right? People want to be fitter, richer, happier. That's expected.
I think there's a lot in there that has to do with things that are of consistency basis, right? So you think of finances, most of the time people are thinking like from a subtraction side. So stop spending so much money on certain things every month, or improving fitness, like trying to maintain a certain weight or whatnot. So I think there's a lot in there that's about consistency. Yeah.
And there was this data point on whether something was action oriented or like negative. Like you said, Felipe, like stop spending money or stop eating this food. And the ones that were action oriented, like improve fitness or work out once a day, were more likely to be stuck with. I think it was 54% versus 46. But what I found more interesting on this was this graph, which is how long do resolutions last? And I was quite surprised. Maybe I'm pessimistic, but I thought that most of them would be less than 1 month. And it turns out that 22% are 2 months, 22% are 3 months or last for 3 months, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think with all of those three things, one being health, the second one being wealth, and then the third one being happiness, those are all things that we seek. But to really get there, they're very difficult. So that's why in those latter parts you see the 2%, 2%, 2%, right? That euphoria of doing it sticks for those 1 month, to 2 month, to 3 month period. But after a while, it sort of runs out that, I'm making myself better, I'm making myself wealthier, I'm making myself healthier. Sort of runs out after a while. And then you see people sort of stop doing it. And what does that really say? I think it says that people want things, but it's really hard. These are difficult things to attain, and people aren't willing to continue to do those hard things for a long time.
Yeah, I think it kind of speaks to just how difficult it is. And maybe this goes off of what you're saying, Micah, but I think it really zeroes in on how difficult it is to be consistent and disciplined with a certain thing. Like that is really hard. And I think a lot of things, especially when you're talking about business or other areas, is all just about like consistently being in this, doing the same thing every day for a certain amount of hours, and then you'll get there. I mean, how many examples or books there are of people putting in 10,000 hours to be a master at something? If it's 10,000 hours, then that just requires a lot of consistency. And you can do the math and like every single day you just need to do a certain amount of hours of doing this for 5-10 years, but it's really difficult to do it in practice. So I think that that's just, it just points to that part of life, right?
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, I think about this through the context of like, okay, so what do I do? Like now that we're approaching the new year, I'm somebody who loves to make some good New Year's resolutions, try to make 2024 better than 2023 was, and continue on our journey of progress. And to me, what I see here is you guys touched on the positive and the negative aspects in terms of stopping doing something versus starting to do something else. And I think we all have things that we want to stop, and that's just a given. But for me, it's helpful to replace that with like, okay, then what will you do instead? That's one thing. Making it something measurable, something checkable. A lot of these, if you were to go back at it, it's like improve health. What does that mean? Does that mean you eat an apple, but you're still smoking a pack of cigarettes, or you're still sitting on the couch all day, but you have one little health, putting a checkbox eligible item on these things for me is helpful. And that's not to say that I'm the master of New Year's resolutions. There's certainly, just today I was reading in my journal my New Year's resolutions from last year. I'm like, there's a lot of repeat offenders on this list that are making a comeback to this year as well. And the last kind of concept-based thing that I found to be really helpful is setting effort-based resolutions and goals instead of results-based. Sometimes those two things can be disassociated from each other. Whether it's, I want to, whether it's something in the fitness domain or the financial domain, it doesn't always translate to what you're putting in is what you're getting out. And I find that I have a lot more satisfaction when I feel like I'm maximizing that effort side of the equation.
Do you guys feel though that this idea of New Year's resolution, like every year it comes January 31st and then you say, okay, new goals, it's almost forced, like you don't have a reason to go after these new goals. You're just sitting there and everyone else is making goals, so you just make them as well. And then there isn't any incentive or real purpose behind that. So there's no reason why you would actually end up doing those New Year's resolutions. I don't know. I feel as if that can be like an issue. I feel like too many people have New Year's resolutions.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And that's, I think, that's why I failed in the past. If I just make a list of 100 things I want to change in my life, but don't have any things to back that up, then yeah, it's going to fail. And I think that might maybe not serve people to do that. Maybe they're better served by just not even going through that exercise at all.
Yeah, and it's funny how people, and I mean, including myself, need something to make that change happen. It's like, oh, the new year, that marks a reason for why that should happen. And it really comes down to like, how necessary is that change, and that dictates what you will actually do. Like if your health isn't so bad that you need to change, it's going to be a lot harder to implement that if you're working out and you're happy with how life is. So I feel like that's a big part of it, is like the foundation isn't there to make that happen.
Yeah.
I think you make a really good point with health being the example in one of those cases. I think what's really important, and that has to be noted, is that you have to take a real step back and be self-aware and have a real deep reflection on the things that you want. Because like Felipe and then Zach, you two just mentioned, it's a lot of, I'm doing this because society is doing this. If it's not genuine and doesn't start from sort of, I need to get to these, places and where I want to be, then you're not going to get there. So how do you do that, right? Let's focus on, not hampering on the problem, but actually finding the solution. If you want to get healthy, then like you said, it can't be, oh, I'm eating an apple, but then I'm going to go smoke a pack of cigarettes. It has to be a deep, reflective outlook on the things that you want. And what can that, consist of? Outsourcing the things that could negatively deter you from those goals that you set out for yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's when we're talking about this, it reminds me of the concept of rock bottom and like the dramatic events that are needed in order to shake people awake and make them change something in their life. And I don't know, for me, like I don't want to have to hit a rock bottom before I start doing the things that I want to do in life. So New Year's and for me, it's my birthday too. I definitely use those times as opportunities to reset. Does it always happen? No. But it's something that you can grab a hold of and make use of it for sure. And it's like setting expectations and then aligning it with the reality that you want.
Yeah, no, 100%. In the last calendar year, I've had 3 jobs. You want to talk about rock bottom? I'm the problem. No, but seriously, being comfortable with those shocks and being able to adjust, and going through the ringer and being okay with change. You have to be a little bit uncomfortable if you want to grow.
Totally.
So yeah, no, I totally amen to that.
Yeah, I almost feel like sometimes New Year's resolutions is this way to give you motivation to get over the slump of winter. It's like 2 or 3 extra months, and then it gets to March or April, and then the weather warms up, everyone's socializing more, and then everyone just throws away the resolutions, that motivation, because like the summer and all that and all of the events that happen there kind of occupy people's minds. So yeah, I mean, when we're talking about what we're trying to do, more entrepreneurial route, you can't predict what is going to come in front of you, what resolutions or what concrete steps you're going to hit. You might accelerate super fast in certain goals, and you might feel like you went nowhere in others. So I definitely resonate with you, Zach, on that feeling of like better habits, but not looking at the objectives, because the objectives, they come when they come,
Yeah, for sure. And in the business sense, I think it's kind of, and I've done it before, but I don't think it serves one well to be like, okay, I want to make X amount of dollars this year, because in a way that's outside of your control, versus I want to hit these kind of input or effort-based things and let the chips fall where they may, let the outcome be what it may. But I know that I can control the number of products I create, the number of new services I launch, and the inputs as opposed to the outputs is how I'm thinking about my own resolutions this year.
Yeah, and I feel like we've touched on it, but like this is a time that a lot of people look back at their year, and I kind of wanted to get into that of expectation versus reality, and how we look back at the year and learn from it, and then how that kind of dictates what we do in the next one. But I know for me, starting 2023, I was like, oh yeah, I'm getting into business, I'm doing entrepreneurship. I had all of these expectations, but most of them were not met. It's just so unpredictable. But I just wanted to ask, like, what are the best ways to look back and learn from what happened? For like, if listeners are just looking back at their year and trying to set up some type of forecast for how they want their year to go.
I can jump in. I think just with me, like I touched on it. Starting my 3rd job, I think it was either last episode or 2 episodes ago, we talked about layoffs. I have a new job. I can't wait to work at a company called Masterworks. But I think at least, Gavin, you also be an example, you living out in San Diego now. I think this is sort of that first adult, year after college. And it was a true shock, I think, with me personally. But like, I guess the point that I'm getting at is that when you're in a new environment and you're around new people, you're trying to do new endeavors, it's important just to jump in. You're going to be frailing. It's not going to be easy. You're probably going to sink more than you swim. But be okay with being comfortable. And I think that's helped me a lot in the last year when you have like layoffs or just events that you weren't expecting, just being ready to adjust and grow from those experiences, at least personally.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, for me, how I do that, Micah, is like having a very clear plan and a clear vision, a black and white vision about how I want something to go, but understanding that in reality it's going to be gray. That for some reason this year, and it was actually one of our conversations before we started recording the podcast, that was just like a lightning bulb moment for me, in terms of like, okay, figure out how you want this to go exactly and stick to that, but understand that there's going to be gray area and there's going to be deviation from that set path.
It's definitely balancing a tightrope between being honest with yourself, but also being forgiving on yourself, because things might go right, but that you slacked off in certain things and you might have gone here or there, but you got it, you did it, you won, it's okay, keep going, you only live once, be happy. I don't know. So that's something though that you have to learn, I think, as years go on, and we're all super young in this podcast, but I think every year you get older, I think you become a little bit more forgiving to yourself for when you fail. I think what's really tough is just making sure that you're honest with yourself when you are messing up and not doing the right thing. That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to look backwards and be like, oh yeah, I used to be messing up, but now I corrected it. It's harder to be like, I'm messing up now, today. How do I fix it for the future? That's a good point.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult to just be honest with yourself and not to beat you up, but I mean, one more year is like another year's data of different things that you followed through with, different things that you might not have. And for me, I just try to kind of forget about the things that didn't go as planned and then build on the ones that I look forward to. I don't know if that's the best way of doing it, but that's kind of I like to forget and then move forward.
Yeah, it's just tough. I mean, I really like reading the Stoics, and I know there's a big movement now. Ryan Holiday, that author, kind of bring modern Stoicism back. But I think just every year you get older, you accumulate more stuff, so it's easier to like attach yourself to the stuff or the status or the things that you're able to bring to you, the relationships, and then say that's because I'm like so smart or I'm doing now everything right. But I think that's just like a natural consequence is as you get older and you're doing certain things right, things just accumulate. So that's where I think those principles of like stoicism and trying to narrow everything down as much as possible.
I think that's a little bit backwards, a little bit, right? Because what you said, you gave the example of people becoming smarter, having more experience, having more wisdom. But what I think people are doing too much with that sort of movement is they're acting stoic, and they think because you act stoic, you're becoming wiser. Where it's the flip. As you become wiser, you become more stoic. Is how I at least see that. I don't think by prescriptively acting stoic, you become wiser. I think by becoming more experienced, becoming wiser, you become more stoic. Personally.
I don't know. I mean, the really good example, like Holiday and all these Stoics point to is like Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who had everything, and he would like sleep on the floor, even though he was at the peak zenith of his power and everything, because I think he knew like laziness and those concepts could creep into your life and there would be no outward signs that that was happening because everything was going well, but things like internally can be going bad. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
but
kind
that's like the perfect example though. Like that's I think that literally like is my point. He wasn't doing that to be stoic. He was doing that because he felt that that was right and that was wisdom, and he acted that way, and then as a result, he became stoic. That's how I look at it. I think wisdom bestokes stoicism, whereas it's not the flip. Where it's like it's not stoicism first and then wisdom. I think it's wisdom and then stoicism. Personally.
sure. I think that. Yeah.
Can we get into our predictions for the next year? Let's do it. So as we look forward into our personal next year, we've also come up with some predictions in terms of trends that we foresee coming. One trend that I wanted to highlight, and I plan to highlight, and that I will now highlight, is the trend of the future of AI, a hot topic. Everybody loves talking about AI. These days, even old people are talking about AI now. And I'm predicting that we will see a more significant rise of AI products over AI services. I think that there are an overabundance of AI services at the moment. There's a lot of large language models for particular industries, a lot of kind of people that are slapping a nice face on ChatGPT backend and selling it as a startup. I think that we're going to see a significant rise in AI products. A couple companies in particular to highlight. I don't know if you guys have seen the Humane pins. It's like it's almost like a phone and a body cam and assistant all in one. It's really, watching the product demo, it reminded me of like a early era Apple product release. I think that it could be a huge flop, but if they hit, that could be a major new thing. And I think that there are going to be major companies that rise out of this that are going to be big players for the future.
Zach, I've seen that, and I think it was an ex-Apple guy that created that. And it has like the exact same feel, but that kind of gets into what I think is going to be big, and that brings up a lot of security and personal questions of like, oh, is AI going to be tracking me while this pin is on my shirt, or like taking videos of my everyday interactions? And I think a big topic is going to be basically the morality of data and AI and how invasive it can become. And like, for example, one company, CRISPR, is doing gene editing and has cured this one disease, sickle cell disease, and like that's a complete cure. I think those are going to be popping up more and more, but where does that stop? I think that's going to be a big topic of discussion in the next year of, can we make superhumans? Can we make all diseases stop and create super strong people? I don't know. I think that will be big.
I would love to agree with you, but I just don't see. I think that we've had huge data concerns already, and like the amount of data harvesting has only been growing exponentially, and the appetite for data conversations is slim to none. Yes, there's outspoken minority groups that speak a lot about data privacy and data protection. But if you look, I mean, even for me, like it's something that I feign to care about, but at the same time, like I have this around me all the time. I use apps that I don't read the terms of service for. I have an Alexa that's probably recording a lot of things that I don't want it to record. I just don't see, unless there's a real watershed kind of like we were talking about, rock bottom moment where something major bursts that makes regulation and policy changes at the federal level that companies have to comply with. I don't know if there's going to be necessarily like a groundswell of individual, in fact, I don't see a situation where there's a groundswell or a revolution of consumers coming up and demanding privacy considerations.
I think the world we live in right now with the technology we have, I don't see that. But in terms of what's going to come, I do. Like if, for example, they come out with a wearable device that can track all of your body's vitals. Like I feel like more and more people would care about that.
But that's
Or
what
if
Apple Watch does.
or if Neuralink connects to your brain and gets your thoughts.
That's what Google does with all your Google searches. And
It's
CRISPR,
different
that's
though.
what
It's putting
23andMe
people
do. You voluntarily spit in the tube and give them your DNA.
but
And
it's
people have done it.
another level of that. It's like it's just getting closer to yourself and on your body. And I
Yeah.
think that's what people
I
will see.
I understand the vein, and I think it's certainly a problem for sure. I disagree that I think like the everyday consumer is going to stand up and demand change. I do not see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's going to take a technology that connects to your brain and then creates like a almost a smarter version of a human for it to be like, whoa, let's settle things down.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see AI grow a lot. We're going to see a lot more products offered that we use day to day, especially by Microsoft, not just like ChatGPT, but they'll have more product offerings. I think that we're going to hit a wall somewhere in some sector with AI that we thought was going to be so easily overrun. And then it's going to turn out that AI couldn't solve it. I don't know which industry, but I think that might happen. I have a feeling that the hype. I also think there's a lot of startups that are saying that they're AI, but they're really not, and they're just doing it to get funding. So I don't know. This is a controversial take, but I think I'm excited to see what AI brings. I think it's going to change the world, but I think we're going to be a little bit upset at the end of 2024 with something.
Like you're saying, it might be another .com bubble, kind of.
I did well. Maybe it's impossible to predict a recession in these things. I mean, I definitely think there's a lot of startups that are saying they're AI and are not AI, and they're definitely getting money. So that there's definitely a problem there. Question is whether those companies can become profitable. So that will determine if there's a recession or not. But I just think in general, people look at, like, I obviously think in pharmaceuticals, sequencing genomes, curing diseases, AI, there's a ton of potential. But I think everyone looks at every industry with AI and says, oh, then it's going to solve this, and then it's going to solve this, and then it's going to solve this. I just think that there are certain areas where AI is just going to be incapable of doing it. I don't know. I look at self-driving cars, like Musk was saying, oh, it's going to happen next year. It's going to happen next year. And then they just keep hitting an issue. And you think that a 16-year-old who's able to drive, like, you would be able to get all these scientists in a room and create a robot that could simulate that experience and drive itself. They just can't. And I don't know. I think certain things in the real world are really complicated, and AI is going to take a little bit more time than we think in certain areas.
Yeah, I agree there. It's kind of goes along the lines of like, oh, we overestimate what we can do in a year, but underestimate what we can do in 5 or 10. And that goes for the societal level too. But I do think things will pop up that are pretty eye-opening. But Micah, I know you had a company that you were looking at. What are your predictions for 24?
Yeah, I'll share my screen. I should have it right.
Well, while you're doing that, I want to comment on Felipe's point because I've already started to see, and I'm sure you guys have too, an increase in products that I already use, like Zoom and like Airtable, and like even in the YouTube comment sections now, they have like an AI summary where they'll group the most popular comments by topic and kind of give you like a bullet point. So I think that I agree with you 100%, Felipe, that there's going to be a lot more companies improving their products with minor AI tweaks, but that make the product, the established product, better. And we'll see if kind of the overall hype of AI, as you predict, will flop.
Well, it's not letting me share my screen. So essentially, the app is called Post. It's sort of the founder is he's the ex-CEO of Waze, like the sort of like Apple Maps or whatever, like Waze or whatever. And essentially, the app is another form of Twitter, but it's localized news, and then it's trying to open the broader conversation to having conversations, having differing opinions. Sort of there's already been a company, that company is called Twitter. This is taking a little bit of a different lens, trying to bring more localized news and local debates about topics, and then having varying diverse topics. Company was founded in 2020. I'm very bullish on it. I think there's a real vacuum of opportunity. A little different than AI. I think AI is a big thing that's the winners that we have now potentially won't be the winners 10, 20 years from now. So I think it's like that thing that we all talk about a lot, but we really don't know where that's going. I do think with this company Post, that they're going to make real segues in the next year in the social media market.
Let's see. I hope so. I think it's been really tough for these alternative social medias to really get a foothold. We saw like Parlor, and we saw what were some of the other ones? There's one with a G. Trump tried to start one, like Truth Social. I think it can be really, I think social media is a very sticky product and can be difficult for people to switch over. With that said, if there is a way to do it, I think that the trend of decentralization will be the path that these new companies, the wave that they can ride to get this turning away from the traditional social media companies.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Like, imagine if I don't have to get my news from CNN about a small village in sub-Saharan Africa, and actually get the news from the people that actually live there. That makes sense to me. And there isn't currently a company in the social media network that does that. So we spoke about institutional trust on one of our first episodes, as you're seeing this growing concave of individuals and societies that trust, for instance, their media or news outlets, let's go ahead and have an alternative like Post that localizes the news, right? So it's not these hegemonic powers that sort of run it, but sort of more local community focused news and ability to talk about and have nuanced conversations about topics. Very bullish on that. And I think that's something that society wants. So we'll see if they make it to the finish line.
Yeah.
Very bullish on this company.
Yeah. It's almost interesting because I almost group it with Gavin's one, because it's like, these are things that I know as a consumer I want: privacy, more localized news, decentralized news. But at the same time, there are things that I don't necessarily have confidence in the marketplace for rewarding or bringing about naturally, which is, it's kind of a funny hypocrisy that yeah, it would be great, but I don't know if I trust, like, I don't know if these things will naturally come about. Maybe they'll have to be incentivized in some way.
That's interesting, because I really think that the election is going to be a huge incentivizing point, because like, imagine the same thing happens like Cambridge Analytica. There's a bunch of these bots posting a bunch of different kind of fake news stories. I mean, the amount of fake tweets and posts right now with deep fakes or AI, like, that can be done so easily. And it'll be so interesting to see what happens with this election, and if the result of that is a lessened trust in social medias, allowing for room for something like that new social media platform. So it'll be very interesting to see.
I certainly think that that's going to be a trend is people, I mean, we were told since we were young, don't trust everything you read on the internet, but that's just getting more and more reinforced with the organizational level fake stuff. And once you create AI versions of that too, then it's really off to the races. Even within like the latest conflict that we're seeing in Israel and Palestine, there's been a lot of like artificial photos, artificial videos, artificial audio coming out of it. It's gonna get really, really difficult to decipher truth from falsehood. And I think people are gonna be inherently a lot more skeptical.
Yeah. Ghost of KM. Is that what it was? Who's the fighter jet? Was it Ghost of Kiev?
Yeah.
That was,
Yeah.
I thought that was legit for like 2 weeks. And the feedback came on that. But yeah, no, totally great point. I mean, that to me, that's going to be very scary in 2024 with the election. Gavin, you made the perfect example of Cambridge Analytica. You know, what does that mean? Like, you want to talk about deep fakes and stuff like that. This could be really insane. So that's going to be immensely interesting.
It's a pretty scary prospect. I'm trying to think about how to spin it in a positive way, but I mean, I remember studying in school, taking a philosophy class, and the concept of like post-truth. And like, does there come a time where the foundational level of truth is so far obfuscated in layers and layers of misdirection or misinformation or disinformation or any of these buzzwords that it's like, okay, we're so far divorced from the foundational truth that there's no getting back to home.
That is scary, and I do not agree with it.
Yeah.
I mean, that I just can't. Like,
Yeah.
if the human race wants to survive, we've gotta have some way of verifying truth, and that's really all we've got on social media is getting farther away. But I think there is a breaking point. Like you said, that layer is getting further and further away, but there's got to be some point where we don't accept it, and I think that's when a player like Micah's company that he brought up will come in and, I don't know, connect it to the blockchain and then verify it through different methods. I just want to believe that.
I think that's where like faith has to come in at the individual level. You know, nobody's coming to
Brave
say,
new world.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but like all things, I think we live in a democratic society. It's like good at responding to really big issues. It's not good at like foreseeing them and solving them before they happen, kind of thing. So it's kind of one of those things. I think just reiterating like what we were talking about earlier, you kind of don't know what's going to happen, but when it happens, then you got to respond, and you just got to focus kind of as you go and see what happens.
Yeah, it's gonna be a very interesting year. But I just have two things to leave us off with. But Micah, congrats on the new job as we start 2024. And to everybody listening, Happy New Year, and we hope you have a great start to the year and can get some good headway on those resolutions and stick with them.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Guys.
Happy New Year.